Hi, I'm Shannon Seaver, and I'm starting a new podcast called Seaver Yarnaddict. And I'm thinking that this podcast would have a lot to do with yarn and a lot of the fun things that I've gotten to do over the past year. I am a teacher of high schoolers. I teach math and computer science, and I have lots of stories that I can tell, or yarns. Ha! So I thought maybe somebody would want to listen to them. So here we are. We will start off this adventure, first of all, by showing some of the things that I've made over the pandemic and things that helped me survive this time of the pandemic. I also want to take some time to interview students and past students about things that they've done to survive the pandemic and just stories they have to tell about school and life. I will also be just talking about different places here in Minnesota, where I'm from, and we'll talk about places that you can see, but also I would like to go into the various yarn shops around here, knitting and crochet take place, and just go see what they're doing and just check it out. I haven't been to a lot of them, so let's go. So that's about it. We'll take some time to do that. And the very first thing I'll show you today is this sweater. This is one of my sweaters that I crocheted early, like November. So I started this and I made it with this yarn bee, and in mauve. And it is a Yarnspirations open front comfy cardigan. That is what I used for this. It didn't take me very long, and I'm pretty happy with it. It works. So let me show you my very first project that I made during the very beginning of the pandemic. And this is what I call my pandemic blankie. I made this blanket starting back in January when the pandemic was being talked about from a distance. And then it came over here, and March 13th was the last day of school for my kids' high school, and it happened to be a Friday the 13th. So it's something that we won't forget. But this is what I made. We just recently gotten a king-size bed, and we need a new blanket for it. And I just love, love, love the colors in this blanket. We'll go and talk about the pattern. So I saw the pattern for this blanket in Ravelry, and it is Sandra Paul's Nature's Walk blanket. The thing I liked about it is, first of all, is 12 different designs, because I also got the expansion pattern for this. 12 different designs. It was at one time a cow. And for those of you that don't know what a cow is, it's a crochet along. So at one point they did like one of these a month for a whole year. And so I started putting the colors together, and I found this yarn. It was in Karen Simply Soft, and also Loops and Threads Soft and Shiny. And so I was looking for mostly in the blues and purples, wanting it to be a soothing blanket. And I started it because I was watching a lot of news and keeping up with what's going on in the world. And it was very, very depressing. If you think back to the beginning of 2020, when the pandemic started, and as a teacher,
it was very scary uh, to be a teacher in that situation. So I didn't know how to crochet. I didn't know how to knit. I just went and found some skeins of yarn that I thought were beautiful. I saw this particular pattern. I thought, I think I can do that. And it took me quite a while, as you can imagine, because I didn't know how to read a pattern. So you can imagine how that must have been. So anyway, but we finally figured it out and uh, got it done. It took me only a couple of months to do this, to believe it or not. And it's about the size of my king size bed. It's not quite long enough to be considered a king size blanket, but almost.
Okay, now it's time for a yarn. We're going to talk about a little bit about how I became a teacher. Okay, so the first time I ever taught anything really was in high school. I helped my mom learn how to do math so she could pass her real estate exam. So that was the first teaching experience I had, and it was kind of difficult, to be honest with you. My mom got frustrated sometimes, so it was not an easy gig, but she did pass. So hey, that was a good thing. But I played school. I don't know about you guys, but I played school when I was a kid all the time, but never imagined I'd be a teacher. And when I went to college, I majored in engineering and worked for a couple of years in a factory that made forklift trucks. And it was there that I realized that forklift trucks and metalworking in me probably wasn't the best match. Although I will tell you, I learned how to weld and I loved that part of it. That was fun. So, went back to school in engineering to get my master's and started working as a TA. And during that time, I was TAing for Professor Fisher, and he was a great mentor. I had a lot of fun helping him teach his classes. That was really my first true experience in a classroom. And I was nominated for TA of the Year for the whole engineering school. So that was pretty cool. So later, I went on to later on, my husband and I moved north, and I got an opportunity to teach at a high school for a year. It was a private school while my husband was getting his master's. And during that time, I was pregnant, and this was my first high school experience. I thought before I started teaching, I thought the kids will automatically like me, and had all these high, dreamy expectations of what it was like to teach, and I was sorely mistaken. Teaching at, first of all, a private school where parents are very, very involved, which is a good thing, but it can also be a hard thing too, is sometimes the kids will tell a different story to the parent than what actually happened. No, you're kidding, right? Yeah, no, it really happens. And so sometimes I had a tough time with the kids because they would misbehave in class, and yet it somehow ended up being me that was doing something wrong. It was stressful. First year of teaching for anyone is very, very stressful. And turning out, being pregnant with also a 1.5-year-old at home, teaching a couple of classes, I wasn't even full time. But my mom suffered from some mental illness situation during that time too. And because of that, I decided I better quit during the semester switch. So it was just too much going on in my life. So that was my first experience teaching, and I thought, I don't know if I could do that again. Later, we moved again, and we moved to an area in northern Minnesota where not nearly as populated as it is in Minneapolis, which is the area I'm in now. And there, I volunteered at the school, and by then I had 4 kids. So time has gone by here. I had 4 kids, and 2 of them were in the school, and I volunteered to help in any way I could. I did a lot of copying for people and fixed the copying machine almost every day. So I was there quite a bit with my 2 youngest in a stroller coloring while I ran copies. And at the end of that year, the principal asked me to work as a math teacher. He asked me to work as a math teacher the week before school started because their math teacher quit. So I came in and I started teaching math again in this school. And I taught not quite full time, but almost. Like I had 3 classes, and I also did some other work for them besides that. And I also subbed quite a bit. So that was really what I count as my first year of teaching. And this time I went into it with knowing that it is not a cakewalk and it is not going to be an automatic that kids will like me. I had to earn their respect, and I had to give them time to get to know me. So that changed everything for me. That was my first year, and I really loved it. So I decided to go to grad school in Bemidji and get my licensure in math. I already had a degree in engineering. I didn't want to go back for a whole nother undergrad degree, so I took the fast track plan at Bemidji State and got my math licensure. From there, I started working in Minneapolis at a little school in St. Louis Park called Quest Academy. And it was a crazy, wild bunch couple years there. In the first year that I worked there, the school board decided to fire the entire admin. And so us teachers not only had to teach, but we had to run all the admin jobs during the day as well. I was working 70-hour weeks, and it was just nuts. I just remember laughing about one of the mascots we were coming up with, because it was a relatively new school, was the contemplatives. It's too hard to say, much less be a mascot. The contemplatives. But and our school colors were purple and white, and we had a dragon for our mascot as well. So it was a crazy place, but you know what? I loved those kids, and I am still in touch with many of them, so that's really fun. They were a great bunch, and they taught me a lot on how to be a teacher then too. And after that, I taught at a school called MTS in Minneapolis. And, I didn't say this, but that Quest Academy ended up closing, which was really sad. It is now a bunch of apartments. They actually knocked down the building, and now it's a bunch of apartments. So it's no longer there. But anyway, my other school that I worked at was not, what do you call it? Not Midtown. I forgot the area, but it's on Lake. And it took me a couple months to gain kids' trust. And then after that, I loved working with those kids. They taught me so much. I was white in a school that was mostly African American and Native American and Latina. They taught me that I indeed was I had racial things in my mind, and they showed me how to get past it. But I love those kids. They were wonderful, and what a culture that school was. It was really a great experience for me. And then a couple of years later, I found a school out in the burbs and ended up going out there. And the whole reason why I got that job was because of my inner city experience. So thank you for that. I did really enjoy that time, but it was like an hour drive to work for me every day. So it was nice to be able to be 10 minutes away from home. So since then, it's been about 9 years at my current school. And since I started working here, I've got my master's in math, and now I have a national certification for teaching CTE, which is technical education. So that's my background in teaching. So maybe some of you have something that I have that I deal with all the time, and it's called anxiety. And during the pandemic, anxiety has become a major issue for me and many of my students. When you're in isolation, it is really difficult. So I had to take up a hobby, and boy, did I ever take up this hobby. I learned how to knit, I learned how to crochet, and I went gangbusters on all of my projects. So since I started a year ago, I have made 5 blankets, about 8 pairs of mittens, 5 pairs of socks, about 4 sweaters, 3 scarves, and now I am currently in the middle of making a sweater, as you can see here. So I'll talk more about this on another podcast, but there's that. So one thing I wanted to bring out is that many of us are afraid to share that we've been anxious, and I believe personally that we need to be free to share this because we all experience it. And to be honest, some of us have experienced it more than others, but it's not that big of a deal to share. So I want all my students to feel free to do that. Thus, I'm coming forward with this now. If you found something productive to do during this last year that helped you through the pandemic, please leave it in the comment section. I want to read about it. I might get a hold of you and say, hey, let's talk about this. This sounds really cool. So please do that. I will also put connections to the link to this, as well as my blanket in the comment section down below. So, well, thank you for listening for this very, very first podcast. And we will do some more in the future.